There was layers to this person.
That is a bit fucked.
I got a fun delivery, but... and I'd swallowed about 4 or 5 of them, which made both of my lungs just pocket. He was married at the time. Restriction is almost a beautiful thing in itself. Looking at my song history and being like, okay, which song's about who? Yeah!
Hello and welcome to Hot Nerds.
Hi.
Hello. I'm your host, Kieran Hennessy, and with me today is a wonderful red-haired Western Sydney/Sydney local with the reddest hair and the most emotive bangers. She is a pop queen of the local scene. She does so many things beyond the music, but also within the music, tells some very real and sincere stories. I'm really happy with that, how that went, because I forgot to script my intro bio here. But regardless, please welcome Sarah to the stage, or remind everyone the best pronunciation for your actual artist name, because I think we should start there. So
there's actually a story in that too. So Yagki. So it's actually an immigration error. So my jadoo and my sittu came here from Lebanon.
And quickly, for those who don't have the familial Lebanese lingo down, please hit us with that again.
My grandfather and my grandmother, when they came here from Lebanon.
But what do you call it?
Jadoo and sittu.
Fantastic. Jadoo and sittu.
Yeah, I'm pretty westernized, unfortunately, so I'm probably definitely pronouncing it wrong as well.
It's my first time. I'm probably worse.
But when they came here from Lebanon, back home in our village, it's Yaghi.
Yaghi.
Which is why it's pronounced Yagki. But when the government read it, they just read it as Yagki. So it's
Classic.
only me and my immediate family here that have that last name.
No way. I'm not gonna lie, that's actually my partner has a similar thing. Her name is like Tibetan, and there's different, it's in the wrong order, and so Jafil. So you came here, and well, we've got a K in there.
Yes, there's a K.
Yeah.
There's a silent K.
So if you are looking it up, anyone at home, it's Yagki. And I wanted to begin today, we were actually just talking off screen about some juicy topics that we will get into later, but I thought, you've talked a lot about your origins and your artistic origins and your upbringing through your storytelling and your content, online presence, but I thought we'd start today with our origin story. Can you take me back to the experiences you had at your Paradise Music Festival on the staff team?
I was there, it was 2018, and it was my first industry anything. I remember I was a month of turning, I was like 18 at the time. I just turned 18, and I was like, I need this internship, and I'm going to poetically license everything I am to get it. And I got it. Woot woot.
You are going to poetically license and what does that practically mean?
My experience was that I had a couple of weeks into my university course of music, and that I had a Cert 3 in live production and sound.
So it was a bold statement on a short resume. Yeah.
Exactly. It was going to be a very decorative one with lots of passion.
It's like, let the cover letter speak,
100%.
hide the resume.
And then, I was there for a year. Like, we worked together for a year, and then we got flown out to Fiji, and I feel like it was kind of like you take a bunch of, like, people from Australia out of the country, and they just forget every single thing to do with, like, any sort of rule. I don't know if I meant to say that. But
No, there's a reason people leave and find little spots,
But
like
it
a
was
tropical
so
island
wild.
overseas,
Yeah, I remember I went on a hunt with with a guest who had something stolen, and then I swear one of the someone stole my thongs, but they were a size 10 men's shoe, so I was looking at all the men's feet being like, who has my thongs? And then it was really good for my first experience, I think, but it was very I think for anything in the industry, especially coming into it at 18, there's always a question of what is the standard and what's the correct, I guess, mode of practice.
Mm-hmm.
And in creating a safe space and being able just to feel good. I think for being 18, and I also, one of the other team members that came on the trip was my partner at the time, which also helped quite a bit. So yeah, I think that was like probably the first moment that I was there, and I have this thing, I still have it, where if I'm working, I don't really drink. Like I find it hard to just let myself go and go, oh, I can be on the job and do this. But I very much realized at that festival that I was like, oh, you can just go and drink and be on the job. And like, I don't know if I meant to be saying this.
I mean, you're not going back.
Yeah, exactly.
To work there.
So I kind of that was my first time to be like, oh, I need to kind of figure out what my standards are for myself when I present, and try and like block out whatever is happening around me. Not that it's not wrong. It's just like, what do I want?
And was that one of the biggest learnings from that kind of baptism of fire of the industry?
I think so. I think it was the first learning for me just starting there was, as long as I kind of come in with passion and a want to do something, it's okay if my resume isn't up to date right now. It's okay for me just to be to have the intrinsic qualities rather than the stuff that like on paper looks good.
And to put yourself out there on that.
100%. And I think that it was also like the other learning of, I felt like, and this is a completely like just my opinion, but how I felt was that as an artist, if I said, oh, I don't want to drink, I don't want to do anything, it was like, oh, that's fine. But as someone in industry, if I said that, it was a bit like, okay.
So you're picking up on an alcoholic culture going on across the board.
Yeah, and being someone that works in industry but is an artist.
A touring artist.
Yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic because a lot of the time, and even most, the last couple of years, I've been told a couple of times you can't be both, which I completely disagree with.
I've had many difficult conversations about that, including with people I was employed by, and but that's because that conversation is always there, and I won't give away too many secrets on my end either.
We're off the camera.
That's before this, but there is a lot of that pressure against artists who are also trying to be entrepreneurs within the music industry. I guess if they're trying to be entrepreneurs outside of it, but even then, it's also semi-frowned upon. I don't know if it's that way in America as much. It seems to be much more like open in terms of allowing that entrepreneurial spirit
to come out.
To run through artistry as opposed to, it's like, who's making these rules and expectations here about that?
Yeah, and I think it's almost like I especially the last 2 years, I've realized more and more about how the first 16 years of my upbringing has like influenced my like perspective and my like work ethic now. But it's sort of like, I think that knowledge is power in anything, and being able to have that. And as an artist, if you can work in industry, it means that you've got more tools to yourself. And I'm just taking a stab in the dark, whether it's correct or not. It's also like, well, if you don't have those tools, you can be exploited more as an artist. If you don't know, you can be exploited more.
Absolutely.
And the people in industry need to make money off something. And if you've got smart artists out there, then
they're not going to get taken advantage of as easily.
Yeah, exactly. 100%.
That's such a great point, because most of the hardest lessons I've learnt that weren't, directly personal or family based were all through shit situations in the music industry. I've had some great experiences throughout, every project I've done, but I've also had, terrible ones, and they all teach you how to stand on your own 2 feet and how to navigate, and kind of like what you were saying before, that what the expectations are of me, but also what you should expect from the people you're working with and the people you're contracting or who's contracting you.
100%.
And so definitely shout out to anyone, trying to be an artist in the industry, 100%. In terms of getting taken advantage of, is there anything, anything you would want to tell us about today? Like that was like going, oh, that's really something that I know that's a boundary, or that's something that I'll never let happen again, or just something that flicked a switch for you.
Yeah, and most recently, without naming names, because I got told I can't.
Apparently a legal note.
I know.
That, yes.
I got a fun delivery, but
Oh, not one you were waiting for.
I know.
Damn.
But I really trusted it was a very small group of people that I really trusted for a couple of years. And when I guess I felt first that they almost took me as a threat because I was trying to empower other artists.
Strange that that's not the business mantra.
And that's the whole thing, and it comes to another point. But I got put in a room, and pretty much, long story short, without getting it too much, I got told that I couldn't leave until my personal laptop was wiped. Well, until my personal laptop was searched, and then because I was kind of in shock with these were friends of mine, I just kind of your fight or flight, and I was. I didn't say yes. I said that they could go into my laptop to log out of their company stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was there for about half an hour and I was like, oh, they're going through my stuff.
That is just fucked up.
Well, it's to the point that they said they were like, oh, do you want someone to come pick you up? So I called my partner. Actually, I called my partner. And then there was this one website that I was like, you can't get into this website. This is my thing. And I just pretended that I didn't know the password. And they said, who knows the password? And I said, my partner does. They made him come into the room, change his password in front of them so they could log into it.
And at the time, like you said, your fight or flight is there. Because obviously in hindsight, you're like, of course I would say, fuck you.
But I didn't. Because I was in
You're in that moment.
Yeah. And I remember afterwards, I went downstairs.
Plus, these are people you trusted
these are people that I
had a working relationship with for years. It's so hard to just switch your perception of them and not look at them as a threatening force, even when they're
when they are.
Yeah.
And I think the whole thing for me is that was a really big lesson recently, because it's unless someone has some sort of grounds of you have a relationship, but I don't know. I don't even know if there's a rule for it, but it's the second that they looked at me and were like, oh, Yagki could take our business away because could do something better than us.
And have the relationships with those artists.
Well, I had the relationships with all the artists, every single one, to the point that they called a bunch of artists after it all happened to speak illy of me, and then they all called me afterwards being like,
what the fuck's up?
Hey, this just happened, we love you, you're chill.
Yeah.
I was like,
I got the ick vibes on the phone with this guy,
yeah. And
that's.
And then I left it. I made a little Instagram post. I was like, you know what, it's fine. You can say that I breached this contract, did this. I was like, sure. I'm a horrible person for trying to empower people. Let it be. And then they just try to restart something a couple of days ago, and I was like, I'm just here. I did have someone on the phone, actually, a friend of mine that works in music as well. I just chatted to him, and he was like, this could be the best thing for your career. I was like, what do you mean? And he's like, you, at the time that you're releasing a song about people in the industry taking advantage of you, and then if it becomes public that there's a company trying to take advantage of you.
That's good song fodder. That's the next hit, baby. Yeah.
It was like, don't shoot it down. Think about this.
It's how can you, where the optics are at on this. Yeah.
I got PR'd by him. I was like, oh, this is what it feels like. He's like, take the moment.
Yeah, yeah. It's and hey, you've got legal letters that could easily become Instagram stories now.
Music video props.
That's it. Well, and a good transition, because a lot of your singles that you've put out have these aesthetics around them, around this core idea that you're trying to tell in this story.
Yeah.
And as you said, Adults, which has just come out. Yay. One of my faves of yours,
Yay.
to be frank. That's come out. A lot of the imagery is all related to the core concept, the core story. Again, it's a story that's quite personal, but also around that, music industry, music education industry being taken advantage of there. Although we were chatting and you said that by the time this releases, you'll actually be about a week away from another single coming out.
Yes.
But I want to talk about both. So tell me how Adults has been, and then for anyone listening, as this goes live in a month, you can tell us about Run as well.
So Adults is, on the surface, a song about me sleeping with my uni lecturer.
Now, when I first hear that, I'm like, yeah. Like, that's a smart book I would read.
Yeah. It's and I've said it at live shows, like I sussed the crowd. I did it once, and I played at UTS Loft, and I said that so boldly, and I was like, I'm at a uni right now, and I've just said this.
Opening those floodgates for anyone who's been thinking about it. I don't know.
Because it's a balance of, it's a balance of trying to tell a story in a light way, but also kind of touch on these like really serious topics as well. Because, and when it first happened to me, I was like, oh my gosh, it's, for lack of a better phrase, like for the plot vibes. Like that's what I was thinking. I was like, oh, this is so like Miller's girl coded. This is great.
So I am main character right now.
Yeah.
And here's the romance.
And I thought that, and then
disregarding the power dynamic that you know.
Completely, because I was just kind of like, oh, this is fun. And then it was 7 weeks of it, and so much happened in just 7 weeks. And pretty much, this lecturer. So we met at 17. While like I did the uni admission interview, and like that started, I'm a December baby, so 17.
He was
30. He looks really young. He was married at the time. Like he had a whole life in that.
There's layers.
There was layers to this
layers.
person. And then I was at uni for 3 years, and he was the uni lecturer that I went to for everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. We'd go out all together to the pub, and this was a university, like any university, that just like was like, you're all musicians, like connect. These are lecturers, but they also work in the industry. It's a positive thing. I was like, oh yeah.
So go have a piss up every Thursday, Friday.
Yeah.
After class, yeah.
But then I kind of was like, and that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned. I'm like, and again, not coming from a teaching background myself and just kind of shooting in the dark with this, it's like just because someone has a really good resume doesn't mean they're a really good teacher.
Absolutely.
And I think...
And they may not know where that professional line is to be drawn either.
100%, because I graduate, and then the year after graduation, I saw someone who... I make really bad nicknames for things. It's my way to like compartmentalize my life.
It's good, like, a hook to hang memory on. Yeah.
And I dated someone called Slicey Dicey Dan.
When you say called, that you called him
I called him that. This person's name is not...
Just clarify.
That's my nickname. So I was in a really...
Was it a Slicey Dicey Dan?
Yeah,
Wow.
it's a whole other...
Was he a butcher? God. We won't go there?
Yeah, we can. We can. Just looking at my song history and being like, okay, which song's about who?
Where is Slicey at in the discography?
They're all in there. They are all in there. But I was in a really bad space, and I remember, I was talking about this the other day, I remember the start of how it happened with this lecturer, but I can't remember the end of it. So I was in Des Moines. I was sitting, and I just had a hairdressing appointment, and I was bawling my eyes out because I was just in a really bad space. And I went, oh, who do I talk to when things went wrong?
Because he was often the one you would talk to.
Always the one I talk to, always the one that I go to when anything wrong happens. So I was like, it's only a year after graduating, let me grab coffee like we always did. We grabbed coffee. I cannot tell you how I got from coffee to that man's house. I cannot, it just...
That is a bit fucked.
Yeah, like it could be like, and it's an interesting thing, and I always try and be very open about this. It's very much, I used to be in I didn't segue. I used to be in a space where I didn't kind of let my stuttering happen, but I'm like, it's important also just to show that, because I don't think there's enough people that go, oh, something really traumatic happened, I'm actually going to share it like it is, which is, you have memory gaps, and it's easy to talk about, but your body remembers, and that's a really big thing that's a part of me.
So you weren't questioning whether he was the cause of your memory loss. You're saying it was a physiological response.
And I've kind of gotten into that, and it's something we can talk about with the next single that I'm going to share more. It's when something really bad happens, I kind of just have this whole, like, it's just a shut off. It's just this Memory gap. So I don't remember. I remember the start. I remember nothing in the middle. I remember getting to his house. I remember him offering me prescription weed. And I was like, I dabble. I can definitely do that. That's fine.
We get down. Used responsibly, we get down.
Use responsibly. Yeah, it's a key word in this. And then from that point, we were doing it. And I was like, oh, this is so fun. And then I realized that it was 7 weeks of within the first 2 weeks, he said that he loved me.
Ooh.
He was divorced.
Also, he divorced.
He divorced
in
at
the
this
meantime.
point. Yeah, he was divorced. And I was very much like, I was only canoodling with this person unless I was high. That was the only time I was. And I was like, well, that also is a sign that I'm not comfortable, and I didn't realize it at the time. And then I very quickly was like, I don't want to be here. So I was trying to make excuses. I was like, I don't have my skincare, I can't stay over. He used his divorce money to take me to Mecca and buy me skincare. Gets better.
That night? Oh.
I don't know, I think it was a Chatswood or something. Honestly, it was some Mecca. I didn't have my laptop, so I said purposely, and I said, I need to go home, I don't have my laptop. He went out and bought me an iPad.
So he's doing everything, every very reasonable
Reason
thing
not to
for you
be
to
there.
leave and go to your own house, he's negating with ridiculous
Yeah.
acts of, whatever the fuck this is,
Yeah.
of
And
entrapment.
And I got to the
trap
point
you.
where I was like, I was 22, so I was like,
yeah, cop me the Mecca, cop me
like-
the laptop. That's, yeah.
I just was at the
And
point where
again, that's the power dynamic that
you feel like you're
allows
forced
this-
to stay, yeah. And the big one, which hasn't actually been said yet, which will be here, I'm excited for your reaction. I was with a housemate, my place, and I used the excuse, my housemate doesn't let people over. This lecturer, went and did house inspections, got a place for me at Summer Hill, paid for a bond, but paid for 6 months of rent up front.
And then is like, you're ungrateful if you don't use it, I'm sure.
It was
the
like
thing that you never asked for.
Yeah.
Mate, he's spending his divorce money wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, he
That is
divorced
so shit.
his ex-wife, I think, was a psychologist.
Oh, well, she would have had a bit on her hands coming home from work every day. Yeah. God.
But I very much at that point I was like, well, if you can't beat it, join it. Like, I'm just gonna let it happen. But also, I'm gonna slowly try and step away. I'm gonna be really nice. It's like it felt like a safety thing for me to be like. He was like, love you, and I was like, love you too. Like, I just, whatever I did to feel safe in that situation, but I slowly was like, okay, well, if I can't leave this person, I'm going to let him leave me. So I try to retract. And there's this one thing on my phone, and it's probably the funniest thing that I have on my phone looking back now. He sent me an email, and to read this
Is
email...
that usually how you communicated?
No, it was by like Messenger, but he sent me a breakup email, and you had to do this. And
Was it from his professor email? Like, what?
But it had his name on it and everything.
But you nailed it then. So you got the free 6 months and you just...
Yeah, and he left.
God. But I mean, obviously you didn't nail it because it's still weird entrapment, but...
I remember...
It resulted as good as it possibly could have. It could have gone way worse.
It could have gone so much worse.
It's still very icky.
It was 7 weeks of it though, and he was really upset, being like, I spent this much on you in 7 weeks. And I'm like, that's not my fault.
Men thinking that they got the entitlement on that.
And the last thing was like, oh, I think we should stop seeing each other. I was at the grounds at the time, and I was so happy. I remember feeling all this weight leave me. I feel like I still haven't felt that weight like that since then. And yeah, I wrote this song. I wrote this song in like 2023, actually. It's 2025 now, as we know. But it took me a while to get it right. I think for me, I wanted to write it in a way that was so word for word descriptive about my situation, but I also wanted to speak about this grey area. I wanted to speak about it's not illegal, but where's the moral line? And it is still grooming, even though you're adults, and that's why the song is called Adults. And I didn't believe it. I didn't believe it was grooming. A couple of my videos, there's people being like, that's not grooming. I'm like, look, I thought the same thing. But it's this feeling that you can't really describe. And what recently has been happening with it, I've had a few people from a couple of unis reach out to me saying they had the same thing, including
With him? They weren't specific.
They weren't specific, and I didn't ask. The uni that I came from, it was that like students from there, other unis as well. So I've had a lot of people. I met up with one of the girls yesterday actually, and it was really reassuring because she was describing this feeling that she couldn't describe about like, oh, it was, you know, it's not legal, but it didn't feel right, and I didn't say no, but I didn't say yes, and I was like, you only understand it once you're in it, but I'm sure there's so many more people that are in it that just don't know where to go. And when I was going through it, I was like, there was no song, there was no, like, there's nothing I could grab onto. So I was like, I want to...
No reference point to say, how do I navigate?
Yeah. There was no creative reference point for me that wasn't either just really over-sexualized or about, like, a child. And that's why I wanted to write adults, and that's why I wanted the content and the world around adults to be so... vulnerable, but also vulnerable because it's me, vulnerable because I'm laying out my story, not because I'm trying to like trigger someone else with theirs. And that was a really fine line that I'm still trying to learn how to do, but it's really resonated, which I'm really grateful for. And I had my partner star in the music video that at the time this will be out, because he had his own experience with another male person in the industry, which I don't think is as talked about when it is two males and there's one of them has a really intense power dynamic on the other. So he started the music video so he could represent his story too.
So that was a bit cathartic for him even to...
Yeah, well, it was odd because he had to play the bad guy.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, could that be healing for him, or is it re-traumatizing? Again, that's that fine line as well that you're trying to navigate. Not only how do I represent those nuances and those experiences that, you know, this kind of universal, but they're also very personal.
Yeah.
But then him also figuring out what it is to be in the shoes of that perpetrator
And I think that's where, which is why I was really grateful that he wanted to be a part of it, because he said that he just hasn't been able to tell his story, and he has his own story. That's another podcast for another day. But he
is a hot nerd. I've seen the photos.
Yeah, he is. And we kind of, in the music video, the first scene's this classroom setting, and I rip out all my old uni books that I had. Like they're all they're uni papers.
I know, because they're all on the single cover.
Yeah.
You kind of it's the ankle down shot of the shoes, but and I was like, that surely was just from the bottom drawer, right? All the papers. Yeah.
Yeah, it was all from the
Finally,
bottom.
this is actually useful. All these notes.
Well, the day that I recorded that music video was the day I had my end of lease clean for that house that the lecturer came from. So the house, it all full circled. So it was so cathartic being like, oh, I'm making this music video about this lecturer in the house that this lecturer got me.
While you're getting the fuck out.
While this is my last day here.
That's crazy.
And all that paper just got recycled. Because, you know, I was
as we should
be.
Either that or burn it.
Yeah, but I needed a music video for that. I'm not going to do anything dramatic without recording it.
I mean, I've thought of doing like a little promo video for my book, because I've got extra stock, and I'm like, there's book burning in the book.
That's
I
cool.
got to get rid of like this box of 30 content.
Yeah, 100%.
And before we get into Run, we'll leave that dangling. Talking about telling those stories, you're doing these songs with all the lyricism within them, the imagery, the full package.
Yeah.
But you're an independent artist. You're also setting up other things around all that to kind of sell it, to push the project, the PR element, the community building. How has your learning curve been with all that? And not just around content creation, but organizing photo shoots and videos, because you've done a lot of them.
Yeah.
A lot of it looks fantastic on the grid. But it's all a lot of effort, money, collaborations.
Yeah.
Plus, you've also done, 12 weeks of Christmas, countdowns, and this will be done by the time this gets released, I think. But I'm participating in your Lady Hampshire gig, which is not just a gig but a whole
Yeah.
activation.
Thank
So
you.
yeah, what's the approach? How's the approach changed for you? What's that learning curve been like, and
Yeah.
and why do you go that extra yard, I guess?
I think for me, and again, as I said before, it definitely does kind of navigate. It comes back to the way that I've grown up, and I think that for me, I would rather do it than have never done it at all, and that's something that I really stand by. And I think that
That's this podcast for me.
yeah, it's and because it's anything, there is nothing scarier than the question "what if," and that's the most petrifying thing to me. And I am very grateful that I have a lot of opportunity now, but I think that a big part of what I do, which has only been really recently that I've been able to start talking about it, because it took me a while to find value in it myself, but I value, taking every moment as it is, because my lungs collapsed on me when I was 3 and I was in a coma. I value, trying to spread these stories and the experiences that I've had, because I lived in a women's refuge at 15, 16 for a while. I lived in housing commission. I grew up in that system, and for me, it's like 2 different lives. And I'm in this side of me, very gratefully, that I get to work, I get to do music, I get to be creative. And I think the biggest obstacle that I have had to kind of really overcome in the last year is that my story is always going to be the most valuable part of who I am, and I can do so much good with just my story and being able to help others. And if not anyone, I still have siblings that live in housing commission and foster care, and if anything, it's just someone for them to look up to, because they're all under 10. So I think that I'm just really happy that I've had other people being able to find something and relate to it. But yeah, I think that one of the biggest obstacles is valuing myself in the process, and still knowing that that's okay, because I have a lot of people being like, "You're so confident," and I'm like, I am, but it's like, it's not because there isn't any fear there, but it's what feels stronger, doing it or not doing it at all.
How is your family dynamic now?
It's much better than it was. I don't speak to my mum. I haven't seen my mum for 10 years out of choice. I made that choice when I was like 14, 15.
So before you'd actually moved out of
Before I
your
moved out,
dad's place?
Yeah, because I lived with my dad, and then I left at 15, 16. I ran away. Very dramatic of me. But I didn't.
A dramatic response to dramatic circumstances.
Yeah, very much so. I just make the jokes. I make the jokes. But
our trauma responses are varied.
yeah. I don't speak to my mum, not because I don't want to, or not because I never craved that relationship, but because I learnt at a very young age, just because your mum or dad doesn't make them a really good person or a really good parent to be around. And why my lungs collapsed was, and it's on the internet as well, why my lungs collapsed was because she left out ecstasy tablets, and I'd swallowed about 4 or 5 of them, which made both of my lungs just cock it. And that, yeah, I went straight into foster care from that, so I don't speak to my mum, but she had another child, so my half-brother, and he lives in foster care, and I visit him and I visit his family, and they're all so beautiful, so I'm very grateful that he gets to be in a better situation. My dad and I used to butt heads a lot, and my dad, which is very heartbreaking when you realize that there's a lot of people in really bad situations that there's other reasons for it, and my dad has everything to be a beautiful dad besides the finance, and that's something that can be so crippling to someone. And it took me a while to realize that. It wasn't until I left home that I was like, you are just dealing with your own weight, and you have the emotional capacity to be a parent, and that's so valuable. I'm very grateful for that. I have my siblings. I've got 4 siblings. I'm the eldest of all of them, which is very telling. But yeah, that's my
mama bear.
Yeah, that's my family dynamic, and I think that it's something that especially the next single kind of really talks about, because my story in the community that we have feels very like out of the blue, but for the community that I grew up in is nothing. Is absolutely nothing. It's just like you wouldn't blink twice at this sort of story.
It's the day to day for everyone.
Yeah, 100%.
Well, speaking of your latest or your next single,
Yes.
even by the time this comes out, it'll be that. So yeah, is it drawing on that difference in those communities, or is it just highlighting what is it just a furthering of your story from childhood?
It's doing something a bit different, and I'm in a really interesting space with this song actually, because Run is about, again, there's always a surface and there's always a deeper. On the surface, it's about me living with sleep paralysis. It's about me, I had sleep paralysis from like 5, 6 till about, I guess, until I left home, 15, 16, and I was having it 4 or 5 times a week for like consistently. And then after 16, I had it like once or twice a week, and then it slowly died off. And that's the surface level. But on the deeper side of that, which is where I'm trying to, I guess, navigate how to speak about it, it's like when you grow up in a space that there's some sort of trauma, there's something there, something's got to give. And I was, I always worked. I was also really academic. I was really creative. Like all this stuff went wrong, and I could keep myself so focused, but there was something that had to give. And for me, it was my sleep. And for me, there's this line in the song that goes, it's very blunt. It goes, 3 years old in a coma, there's no way to get closure. Because I think that everything for me comes down to that one moment of like, I could have died. I could have very easily died. So Run it's very Veronica's meets Panic at the Disco, to be honest. And it's very energetic, but it's this feeling of like falling forward. You're falling and you're falling, but you keep getting up. And this song, is on the surface level about my sleep paralysis, but on the deeper side, it's like when you've had so much happen to you, when you've had to carry the weight of so much, something's got to give. There's this really key part about it that I'm still trying to figure out, where I want to represent, and hear me out with this.
Please.
I want to represent male aggression in the female gaze. And what I mean by that is that I think very much just a very opinion.
Is this going to be about dark romance vibes?
Not yet, but cool. I think that when people think of someone going insane that's female, they think manic, they think Harley Quinn, they think like this, like there's no control. But I think from a male perspective, and I actually got inspired seeing a snippet of Outer Banks, this character JJ, and he's got like this baseball bat, and he's lost in his mind, but there's so much control in him, and it's so sexualized. It's like there's thirst traps. Like I'm not complaining, but I was like, well, why is it that? I was like, I want to encapsulate that. I want to show this part of me and this version of myself at 16 who was so reckless but so in control of herself. And for a very long time, which is where Run becomes the shifting point for me artistically, I have done a lot of, here's my story and I'm telling it to you like a third person, like I'm telling it to you like this, but here's my story and here's me become this character again in a safe way as well, because there's obviously, that's why I'm taking my time with it, because I want to do it in a way that also isn't re-triggering to me at all. But it's also really important for me to share this story because it's kind of like the prequel to everything about Yagki that everyone knows so far.
When you're working through all this, like you said, walking that tightrope, what's your self-care when you're delving deep like this?
I say this knowing that I do need to do more of it. It's I need to try and actually prioritize the way that I handle my relationship with sleep. That's going to be the first thing, because I haven't had sleep paralysis in a couple of years now.
Congrats.
Thank you. And I reached out to this artist that specializes in sleep paralysis. I honestly was just Googling it because there was no songs for me about sleep paralysis. It was all insomnia. So I was like, okay, well, how? And again, it's like, where's the songs about it? So I reached out to an artist and I asked him, I was like, and he replied back, which was nice. I was like, how do you tap into a world that almost feels so distant? and he sent me like a sleep journal and just trying to like separate it. So I'm going to do sleep journals, handle my relationship with sleep. I also had a suggestion from my partner to like any time that I tap into that space to go into a different room that's not the bed. So I can almost like leave it in there and then come back so I can step in and out of it. But I'm honestly still trying to figure it out. And I think there's also nothing wrong with me saying that I still am trying to figure it out. And I'm, you know, when this is, it'll be very interesting to listen back to this podcast and see how it's transitioned, because it's probably, for me, it's going to be not the most difficult. It's the most, it's the next big obstacle for me to go, oh, how do I represent this person? Because, yeah, I've shown a lot of me now, but I haven't shown the prequel. And I think it's really important to show the before and to represent who I was at 15, 16. Who was just, I'm going to stop talking. I keep blabbling.
No, this is the story. And I want to add that I think one of the things that you do so well in your artistry is how sincere you are.
Thank you.
And all of this comes across, and you've been very public, especially in the last few years, around that pre-story of you know, the story that I didn't know about you, and that real heavy shit, you know, and then when you're talking about a character as well, you know, and those references to what you're regarding, and is that a character that is a version of you at 16?
Yeah.
Or is each song, or is this something per song, or is it the overall? You know,
the overall artist.
Yeah.
Coming back to what I said a little bit about the lecturer, which kind of just all stems from that one moment about me with the coma. What the product of me having such severe sleep paralysis was that if I don't write and if I don't do music, I almost kind of lose my memory. I almost have those gaps. So for me, each song is like a time capsule for me. And music for me has been a way for me to hold on to myself. And it's when you... And I honestly feel like if I wasn't writing, I would forget those moments and I would forget those feelings. And when you grow up in the life that I had for my first 16 years, it's like you don't feel, you don't do, you just survive. And I've been very grateful to come into this part of my life for a very long time now, where people just don't see that in me. And it's always, you know, there's like the happiest people of those stories, and I'm like, but you can be both. And
the ones who have gone through the trauma, but also the healing.
Yeah, and
are always still going through the healing.
100%, and I still am as well. And I think for Run, what I haven't shown yet is how much of a time capsule these songs are for me. It's every song is a moment. So Adults is 22, Run is 16. Just a Ghost is probably like 21. And for me, what hasn't been shown yet about my artistry, which Run will show, is that I feel like I keep so busy sometimes because there's this fear of like, if I don't stop, then I feel like I've always had this fear, if I didn't stop, I wouldn't be able to tell the difference between what was real and what wasn't. And that came really young because of how severe the sleep paralysis was. If I didn't stop, then I wouldn't be able to tell what was what, and that's why
Didn't
I
stop
work.
making music, or just generally
just doing anything.
Yeah.
And that's what I mean, where I'm like, everyone knows me and who I am now, which I'm really grateful for, but there's a prequel to it. Even just something simple as, I love my Red Bull. Why do I love my Red Bull? Oh, I started doing that because I wanted to stay up so I wouldn't fall asleep.
Okay.
But now it's just in a way that I've been able to control it. Oh, Yagki's so busy and works all the time, and that's really good, and I've found a very healthy way to do it now, but it started because I just didn't want to be asleep. I worked so much that I just kept myself up, and I think that it's really important to show the prequel, because then I can show the journey of how I healed from there to now. Sorry.
No, please. Our second episode was actually some Vedic meditators.
Yeah.
And that whole concept is the slowing down and not running and not always doing the things. But they only ever came to that because they were doing the exact same thing as you.
Yeah.
And realizing that stopping and giving yourself that space and that time, and like you said, not being in that survival mode all the time.
Yeah.
Have you been able to give yourself that time?
I think I'm still learning. I think I have very big jumps every year. I can reflect on myself and go, 2 years ago I was probably working like 7 jobs. Now I'm like doing 2 or 3, and it still seems busy, but I think for me, and the way that I look at healing is like, as long as I'm being able to grow from who I was at a certain point, I'm still going. So I think that, as always, I'm still trying to learn that balance and learn what I need to feel safe and to feel calm. But I am much better at it than I was last year, so much more better at it than I was 2 years ago, and that's all I need. I just need to make sure that I'm still focusing on my growth, which is what I've always done. And yeah, I'm excited for this Yagki to come out, but I think for this year it's kind of going to be a let's show you the prequel, and then let's show you the next couple of songs after that, how I kind of started in this really, really low well and how I've just kind of climbed my way out of it.
Clawed your way
Yeah.
to the top.
But
Fantastic. And something I bookmarked in my mind when you mentioned when you were exploring in Run male aggression and the female gaze.
Yeah.
Could you just give us another run through of
Yeah.
what you mean by that, or what you're exploring in that?
I think for me, it's I saw this video, the JJ video. I want to have me being a female artist and showing this recklessness, showing this aggression that comes with this, innate anger towards the world. But it's not manic. And I feel like when I was doing research, when I was trying to find like a lot of inspiration visually for it, which I always do, most of the female characters, I don't want to say all because I don't want to, shoot myself in the foot, but most of the female characters were all kind of represented as, they've lost it.
As opposed to like level-headed warriors.
Yeah, like people that like compared to the male characters were like, who are so in control of this. They knew that they lost it. But
even when they were aggressive, they were on purpose. And
yeah.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's going to be like showing this recklessness. But I, at 16, was so in control of myself. I knew what I was doing, and it was this like self-inflicting destruction and I think which will kind of really emphasize in this song. It's like, it was so just deeply rooted fear. It was recklessness because it was fear, and it was this dark cloud around me and around this song that's just keep running, just keep running, just keep running. But it's not because you want to run into a wall. It's not because you want to run and do something reckless. It's because if you run, you don't stop, and if you stop, then something bad can happen to you and you can get hurt. And that's where the fear came in.
What does self-love have, because when you're saying that, I'm thinking, if you love yourself, you wouldn't try and run from yourself.
Yeah.
That's something that I had to go through myself, and I think I love myself now.
Yeah.
But it came with a slowing down.
Yeah.
It came with a lot of that inner work, and then cracking in and loving yourself is an activity. It's not it's not you do it and then it's done. It's ongoing, and it's just great to hear. Yeah, like you're obviously still going through a lot, but you've got all of the framework for it. 100%. You seem to see it all clearly, and it's stuff that you can't see clearly when you're amongst it. But you're obviously in such a great position now, right?
Yeah, and I definitely am, and I think that if anything else, it's self-awareness, and I've been going to therapy for about like a decade now. Like I realized really young, I was like, I want to make sure that I'm doing what I can. Even when the song was inspired by 16-year-old Yagki. She was going to therapy because she went, okay, I'm in this, but I also need help. I recognize that I need this. But for, I guess with the love, it's very much been within the last year or two that I very quickly realized, I was like, yep, I'm great. I'm doing everything, but there was something missing. I ran away from home. I left it. I walked away from that life, but I didn't just walk away from it. I buried it. Like I hid it, and I became a completely different person from it in all the best ways. But I think for me, and which I am in the process of. For me to truly love myself, I need to accept every single part of who I was, who I am, and who I will be. And I was missing the who I was. And it's kind of really sad. I spoke about this to someone a few days ago. It's really, I have a lot of, I guess, like melancholy for me burying myself, because those first 16 years of my life is the reason that I get to be who I am now. And for me, it was almost really sad because I was like, if I don't show that, then there's the version of me that was all blood, sweat, tears that never gets to come out of that hole that I just buried her in.
It's so interesting you say that, because I don't know if you've ever heard of integrated family systems.
No.
It's a psychological theory or body of work, came out of the 80s, still practiced to this day. It's very non-pathological, aka doesn't say that your mental health responses are wrong or bad. It's just that they're natural based on bad shit happening to you.
Yeah.
It's all very natural responses to fucked shit going on, right?
Yeah.
And part of why it's called integrated family systems is because it came from a psychologist who had all this background in family dynamics and psychology there, but he was seeing patients who were actually describing internal battles as if they were kind of competing family members.
Yeah.
And as he kept going and kind of working through this new framework, he was kind of postulating that you've kind of got like a protector part and all these different parts that when everything's fine, it's fine, but a protector could be the cause of addiction. Yeah. Because you're trying to drown, what's happened to you. And so you're kind of always in dialogue with these different and sometimes conflicting parts. And one of those parts is the inner child. And I think it might have been Tim Ferriss did a podcast episode with him where he actually went for a portion of the episode, kind of practiced this, whatever they do in the, in the room, on the couch together, a psychological session, I guess. Yeah. And it was fascinating because it's real time watching someone with, the host of the podcast as a patient and who also, he'd been sexually abused when he was younger, and watching him live, like go through, because the practitioner will basically be saying, like leading you down the rabbit hole of your memories. Yeah. And creating these, like imagine this space, and then here's your like childhood self at the age of whatever age you were when this thing happened or when these things were happening over this period of time. And he guides you into this relaxed, you don't have your walls up as much, and then you go into that imagery and these massive results that you get from like that visualization process with those walls down, and then actually being in dialogue with your inner child. Yeah. Because everything you were saying, that's what I was thinking, because you've essentially had to dig up the mental dirt to then have that conversation or have that dynamic again with your childhood self. And it sounds like that's been a pretty wild process. I don't know if anything I'm saying is like, oh yeah. No,
it's anything around like psychology and the way that the human brain works, I love it so much. And I think that that's why I think this song is going to be so interesting coming out, because I want to really show that process. I want to show the process of how I find her, I separate myself, and I know I'm separating myself as a way to kind of like, I think it's a safety thing. I'm guessing that it's a safety thing for me to be able to kind of like keep who I am now and 16-year-old me very separate. But the process started because I just had a lot of melancholy for a major part of who I was that never got to share her story.
And now she does.
Now she's doing it. Now we're running. We're run.
Fantastic. Well, I know you've got to run. You've got to chat to the Lady Hampshire crew.
I'm sorry. I'm always running somewhere.
No stress. I'm looking forward to being there on the day.
I'm so excited.
So before we wrap up, we'll zoom back out. Yeah. And I'll just give you a quick couple of questions. We've just had the Triple J Hottest 100,
Yeah.
and I know you've had a lot of support from Triple J and Triple J Unearthed.
Yeah.
What does Triple J Unearthed mean for you and aspiring Australian musicians now? And how does it feel alongside that, seeing a Hottest 100 with like 20-something Aussies and no new artists, really?
Yeah. I think that Triple J Unearthed has been really beautiful for me in terms of just discovering. I say it to as many artists as I can who are like, how do I play in a different state? And I'm like, I go on there and I've just searched for artists because they have their locations there. So I think Triple J Unearthed as a platform it's a really beautiful, without just, I don't have a better way to say it, there's like a research tool for the artists that are out there.
That's such a great,
Yeah, it's a research tool. It's like you can split the songs up by genre, you can go through the artists, you can find someone that aligns with you, and you can use it to find other independent artists. And I think that...
Do you do that to build tours?
Yeah, I've done that, yeah. I've done that to build tours, I've done that to like do writing sessions. It's like if I have a lot of artists that I know that are like, oh, they won't support me, and I'm like, well then go into the platform and find the artists in that platform that you will support each other.
Find your tribe through it, yeah.
Find your tribe. You don't need, and I love Triple J, I love Triple J Unearthed, but you don't need an organization, a company, you don't need a name on you to find your people. You can do that. And I think it is really heartbreaking seeing that there wasn't a lot of Australian artists, but there I still think is, I don't think that there is a lot of recognition and there's not a lot of spaces still for independent artists to get their time. And, you know, what we spoke about at the start of the podcast, $14,000 for a PR campaign for a friend of mine actually got quoted. It's like, that's why the artists aren't getting access, because they needs to be more, I guess, knowledge out there for artists to take the tools. And I think that it's something that I'd do. It's like, if because I do publicity as well, it's like, I don't want to work with an artist freelancing now until they know everything about what I do. They know what I do, they know what I'm doing, and
your values.
Yeah, and I'm like, if you want to work with me because it's easier to do it with me than spend the hours learning it than failing to relearn, okay, but don't do it because you feel like you have to get somewhere. And I think that...
Remembering like your return on investment, like $14K for an indie artist to get on Triple J, like...
Make an album.
Make an album,
get some press for sure.
Do anything else with that $14K.
Do not need it. I think what it just shows for me with the Hottest 100 is like there's power in community, and you know, it's a bucket list one for everyone to be on it, but you don't need it. The bucket list should be just building a community where if you have as many people as you can saying your name from the ground up, it does not matter what happens there. You just build your community.
And on that note of community, you studied at AIM, did a Bachelor of Arts in Entertainment Management.
Yeah.
Something that I regret I don't regret it, but I didn't study anything creative at university. I did business and law, and I did actually do advanced Hispanic studies. Hola.
Okay.
But you know, I was choosing all these things because of, you know, cultural social expectations.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily the career I wanted, but I knew it would kind of bolster any career, even a creative one.
Yeah.
As we said, you know, the more you know of the back end of the business helps you on the front end.
100%.
To not get taken advantage of. But I didn't get to meet writers.
Yeah.
I didn't even meet musicians and DJs until I got into the music industry.
Yeah.
Other than just on the peripheral, you may or may not. But
yeah.
At AIM, all your colleagues and your student body are all there as writers and music people. How was that for building that community? And I guess to wrap up our chat, you know, how has that formed who you are today? Obviously, there's been some formative experiences with professors we've discussed, but yeah, like, and would you advise studying at a music college versus not? You know, because that's a big question around, is university even a viable thing anymore?
It's a massive question. I don't think you need it. I don't think you need it to do it. But if you're someone that I loved it because it was my first experience doing anything music, and I went in there, and in the most respectful way possible, I was like, I'm gonna get everything I can out of this. And if you're the type of person that will go into somewhere and seize every opportunity, go out there, like, doesn't have to be told this, like, go for it at like uni, but you can also just do it yourself. You can find the gigs, you can do it. But if you're someone that needs guidance and a bit more like to be thrown into uncomfortable situations, and you need to kind of have a bit of that pressure to push you in there, I think uni, because then you get forced into classes, you get forced into those social outings, like
It's structure.
there's structure around it. So I think it's a yes and no. If you're someone that can just send it and just go for it and just
Can you professionally send it?
if that's on the resume, go for it. But if that's something that's not there just yet, and you need to be in those uncomfortable situations, you need someone to kind of nudge you in, then I think uni, because then it's someone there just guiding you, which there's nothing wrong with.
Oh, and hey, how important are mentors when they're the right ones, and all that jazz. Well, we should wrap up. I know you got to run, and I got to run. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Actually, I will ask you one more thing.
Yeah, tell me.
Given your hustle on socials and your presence online and the PR hustle, what advice? I have a very complicated relationship with being online and being on social. So what is your advice to me and other creators out there who are trying to navigate that online space? And has that changed for you now that the administration in America and all the tech stuff going on?
With social media, I had the best. I'm giving this person a lot of shout outs. My partner used to do music. He got signed to Sony Music. He was in a whole shebang. And he had a really big social following, a massive social following. And I said, how did you get that social following? And it came down to audience, and something that I practically did. We were driving down to Melbourne, and I was talking, and I said, he said, he was like, get up your favorite artist. And I was like, okay, Spotify, this is my favorite artist. And I went through every single song, and I could say each and every one of those songs what it was about. And he's like, how'd you know that? Socials, same with a book, same with any sort of podcast. It's like, if I could point at something and go, I know exactly how to get there, like I know about it, that's so powerful. And then I asked him, and I said, well, how do I get people to know that?
About you.
Yeah, I was like, well, how do I do it? And it's a very markety thing, but it really helped me. We were in the car, and he told me, imagine those 3 people, and they're your 3 ideal fans. Fans of the book, fans of music, fans of podcasts, whatever it is, your 3 ideal fans. And he politely forced me to give them names and ages and backstories and everything. And I developed these 3 people. Yeah, 3 characters who are ultimately extensions of myself. And what he did after that, we made them, and I got it out. He said, now everything you do online, ask yourself which one of those 3 people are you talking to? Because then it almost takes the fear factor out of it, because you know who you're talking to. And it's worked for me.
Not this nebulous,
not just like
potentially infinite pool of faceless people,
And I had followers drop because, no other way to say it as a female artist, the people that were like there because they were like, oh, she looks kind of okay.
They were there for the thirst trap.
They were there for the thirst traps, and I'm so guilty of it. I don't mind. I love one. I'll still dabble. They were going, but then those 3 personas, those people, those real people that could resonate with who I was, that I could help make that community, started coming.
They were there, and they were the ones there for the music, for the story, for
everything.
You, not just random stuff. That they're the people that are going to buy tickets to the show,
buy shirts, like all of that stuff. But yeah, that's my biggest advice. It's when everything feels infinite, restriction is almost a beautiful thing in itself, and restrict your content in a way to go, who are the people I'm talking to? Who do I want? And just keep it and just keep going at it. And just go, okay, who am I talking to of this? Who am I talking to? And it was a lot to be like, to do it at first, and then it almost became second nature. And now I don't really need to think about it. Now I know who I'm talking to.
Yeah, you're targeted now.
The fear's still there. It's always going to be there. And I try and make that as clear as I can, because a lot of people are like, oh, how do you become confident? I'm like,
That's a process.
That's a process. You don't become, I think it's just you become more sure of yourself.
And you make more mistakes and learn from them, and you're like, well, I've made that mistake already.
Yeah.
Whatever.
It's out there. But,
well, let's not make the mistake of making you late for your next thing. So thank you so much, Sarah.
Thank you so much.
It's been fantastic.
It's been so good.
It's been a lovely catch up. Thank you for listening to Hot Nerds. Get amongst it. Go check out Yagki and
Doing my thing.
Runs out in a week in the future.
Thank you.
Charles. Thank you all.
How was that? I love
That's
that.
fantastic. I do have no questions.
I'm so sorry. I felt like I was just yapping.
Thank you for listening to the Hot Nerds podcast. We don't host ads, but if you find any value in what our team does, please feel free to support us via the links in our show notes or buy my book, as it greatly assists with producing this show. Thank you again. See you soon. Stay hot, stay nerdy.